Foxconn's involvement here in this region, we see Taiwan has a footprint in a robust Ohio's auto industry. I think it's a very significant step.
That is an official from the Taiwan Chamber of Commerce. I've covered this before. Let's get into this.
And we want to see a success. I hope that this is not only about Foxconn, but also for Taiwan companies as a platform to invite them over here. And my job here, even though my office is Chicago, but we cover 7 states of Midwest, including Ohio. So I hope I can come here often to work together with the team here.
From our global operation, we have a 1 million employee in the global market. The first thing is people are super important. So of course, this facility is good, but also the key reason we acquire this asset is because they have 400 talent and experienced auto worker, and we realize the supply chain and the people in Ohio is very good. It's very good. So we're not leverage those resources, and when we bring our technology, we also need to learn from local, because on the vehicle side, I think the team here and also the ecosystem in Ohio is super good.
Yeah. One thing about having a common architecture that can be used by multiple OEMs, the benefit of that is you could get scale and you don't have to do it all yourself. With a plant like this that can 6.5 million square feet, can build over 400,000 vehicles, one OEM doesn't have to build that on their own. If we have a common vehicle architecture, both the software and the hardware, we could share components such as battery modules, pack, motors, inverters, power electronics, front suspension, rear suspension, body structure, and not just only that hardware, but the software side and the engineering of that. You design and test and industrialize a system for one set of vehicles. You can develop other vehicles or variants of that platform much faster and at a lower cost. So that's going to be an advantage for Foxconn in this plant, off the MIH platform, and for us as a smaller commercial fleet focused OEM.
Have you begun any joint designs on future products yet?
We have started some of the early development work on the Lordstown vehicles off the MIH platform. So yes, the short answer to that is yes.
All things automotive. Today, I want to talk about one of the key reasons why the stock prices from legacy automakers stink. Over the last decade, Tesla stock made a lot of millionaires out of ordinary retail investors. Not so with the legacy car companies. Their stock, with maybe the exception of Toyota, were terrible for long-term investors. Anyone who invested in them did not make much money or even lost money.
So I think this is the death knell for OEM.
And that's before you even account for inflation. Ford brings in $10 billion a year less than it did a decade ago. GM brings in $25 billion less. They had a negative growth rate for a full decade. And this is a key reason why GM and Ford have the lowest price-to-earnings multiples on this list of legacy automakers.
You know, for this Autoline host to do this in Detroit, make these statements, wow.
It's obvious to me that the stock prices of these legacy companies are going to underperform the stock market for a long, long time to come. Because who wants to invest in companies that aren't really growing at all?
The next section is the spec video I did some time ago. It's mostly right. There may be some corrections here, but it'll give you an idea. This is MXUX. I'm just going to move forward here. I'm going to try to do this quickly. This is the Ride 2023 Endurance consumer model. I've gone through a lot of information. I think this is what Lordstown is spending $90 million a quarter on. So I've gone through a lot of information. I've got, to the best of my ability at this present time, what I think the exact options and specs of this endurance consumer endurance truck will be. Again, these numbers here may have changed. I believe the battery's 90 kilowatts right now. We got 109 kilowatt lithium ion liquid cooled battery. Range 200 miles. Not final. Not final. Okay. This is from internal testing. There's no EPA reading on this range. Curious. Frunk 9.6 cubic feet. We've gone over this. It's half of what the previous was. There's a 400 watt outlet in the trunk, frunk, and it's lighted. The bed is a 5'8" bed. I believe it was 5'6" before. And there is a bed off option for this truck, which is important because the Silverado and the Cybertruck are not going to have a bed. They're incapable of having a bed off. Bed off means you can take the pickup truck bed off and put a flat bed on it or a special purpose bed. The bed has a 400 watt outlet. It's got a light. It's got tie down hooks. It's got tailgate locks. And I believe these are locks that are in place so that someone cannot open the tailgate and remove it from the truck. Okay, I do believe that is the purpose of these tailgate locks. There's also a camera in the bed. So you've got an outlet, a light, tie-down hooks, locks, and a bed camera. Now, you know, the Ford F-150 has a big conglomerate of the Lightning of outlets. I just want to tell you, from having used a pickup truck in actual work situations, that outlet, that electrical center with that little plastic flap on it is going to last 10 minutes. Okay? That is not suitable for work, in my opinion. We'll see what the final looks like on that, but that's going to be, in my opinion, going to have to be much more heavy duty for the kind of use I was using, putting wash gravel in a pickup truck, these types of things, shoveling loads out of a truck. You know, I don't see it working. Okay, in my opinion, that's a grocery getter. I think that the endurance outlet is much more feasible for a work truck. Moving forward, spare tire. Okay, spare tire, full-size spare tire. It's mounted under the bed, and it includes a toolkit. So this is a big deal because, you know, you get a full-size spare. Okay, and it's not mounted in some cubby hole like the Rivian. By the way, Rivian's an SUV. I'm not even going to talk about it. Okay, now the towing capability of the Endurance consumer model is going to be 4 tons. Okay. I do believe the towing package, from what I've seen, isn't an option. It's standard, at least so far. So that's going to include a hitch, enhanced cooling, probably some suspension enhancements as well. Now, this is the thing about the Endurance. Of all these electric trucks, it's the only one with a solid rear axle. According to Sandy Monroe, this is the only way to tow. Everything else is a compromise, okay? This also has leaf springs in the back. So we have a very rigid rear suspension, which is ideal for towing. And I might add, and we're going to get into the capacity, the weight capacity of this thing. When you have a solid rear axle, okay, and you have leaf springs in the back, guess what? If you have to overload that truck a little bit, you can do it. It'll handle it, in my opinion. Now, this is a new vehicle. It has hub motors. The wheel bearings are important. I'm sure they've spec'd these wheel bearings out to the nth degree. But I'm just saying, you're not going to be able to overload that Lightning because of the fragile rear suspension, and I don't care what anybody says. That's why they put that scale in there, and if you overload that truck, you're going to avoid the warning. But anyway, that is the towing. I think this is a very capable towing vehicle for consumers, and it makes you worry less about the capacity requirements because, you know, you can tow a trailer if you have to. You have 4 tons. That's more than the Ford Lightning F100. More than enough for a boat and so forth, or dirt bike trailer, so on and so forth, Airstream trailer, whatever it may be. In my opinion, a very good towing package. Like I said, they've got all kind of gimmicks on the Lightning, enhanced towing mode and all this. Listen, solid rear axle, leaf springs, that's a towing vehicle, okay? That's a truck. That's a real truck, okay? Not an SUV. Moving forward. Now we got the Payload. It's 1,200 pounds. Now this has gone down again from 1,800 pounds because obviously more weight has been added to the truck. I think that might be for the standard towing package, as the towing package was listed as an option in the past. The hitch is about 100 pounds. Then you have extra cooling apparatus and more cooling fluid. But in any case, as I mentioned, we have this large towing capacity, so a trailer can be used if necessary to exceed this. Also, I do believe there's wiggle room with a solid rear axle and leaf springs. Now, let's just go through this drivetrain. And I want to start this by saying this is, in my opinion, and you can look at my last video comparing it to the top-of-the-line Porsche. This is the most capable battery electric four-wheel drive that there is. These are motors at the wheels. All the corrections are made at the wheels. There's no linkage. This is instantaneous digital control. For off-roading, I don't think it's going to be able to be beat. For snow, and ice, you can look at the last video on the snow and ice testing. And in a California climate, like Southern California, when it rains, everybody makes fun of Californians for panicking about rain. What happens is it's dry most of the year. Oil drips and transmission fluid drips on the roads for 10 months, and then it rains, and all that stuff floats on top of the rain. And it is very much like black ice, and you'll be going down the highway and you'll hit a patch of it, or you'll come to a stop sign and you'll hit a patch of it. This four-wheel drive system is going to be able to handle that remarkably well. As well, collision avoidance. We haven't seen any moose test video on this, but I am sure that this is going to pass the moose test without a problem, and it's going to be able to handle if you have to make high-speed maneuvers when you're traveling on the highway, or if you're traveling on a winding country road or driving through one of the canyons out here. This is the truck you're going to want to have with this drive system. Well, let me just go forward here. Now, this is a true four-wheel drive, okay? This is 4 hub motors. Now, Ford says, well, they got 4. Well, they got 2 motors, okay? And they got a bunch of connecting shafts, and they got all kind of stuff going on. This is true four-wheel drive with a motor at each wheel. That's 4,800 pounds of torque, which is high, as I understand it, as battery electric vehicles are. They have 550 horsepower, not final. Quick clip, the F-150 getting dragged by an Endurance. Again, I think they're doing testing. I don't know if they're sandbagging for the SEC, but previously it was 600 horsepower. So we have a not final on the battery and the range, and battery and the range, and a not final in the horsepower. Now, here's the other thing of this drivetrain. It's got 30% greater regen than a normal battery electric vehicle because the wheels are adjusted every millisecond, and they're either providing power or providing regen. Okay, that's how the torque vectoring, that's how the four-wheel drive works. Okay, so the regen is 30% higher, so you can expect better performance in stop-and-go driving. Okay, and I think this is going to enhance the range. We'll see what the EPA range is. Okay, this is digital millisecond adjustments at the wheel. You got to understand these other companies. And even Porsche, they've got connecting CV joints and drive shafts and reduction gears. And in the case of the F-150 Lightning and likely the Porsche as well, they got an electronic differential and they got all these moving parts. And, the computer sends a signal to that system, and it's got to go. First, it's got to go through the gearing, then it's got to go through connecting, and then it's got to go through the drive shaft, then it's got to do to the CV joint, and then finally it gets to the wheel, and the drive shaft has to direct energy to the wheel. You could say, well, that's going to happen quickly. Well, when you're in an accident, and and you're avoiding an accident, and every millisecond counts, there's nothing that's going to react quicker than this endurance consumer model. Okay, and I think that's important. And I think that's an important safety feature that shouldn't be overlooked in this car. It's got digital traction control. This thing, you can see the videos. I mean, it's fantastic. Torque vectoring is also digital. And this really is a better system than the Porsche, I believe, because of the wheels, motors, and the millisecond reaction time. And this is using the wheels basically to steer the vehicle, okay, to maneuver the vehicle. And you can see my last video on that. I'll see if I can put a link to that in here. Digital electronic stability control. Now this is a standard feature with many cars. It was established really in response to the Moose test, which was taken in the 80s, which greatly enhanced the safety of vehicles. In this case, again, at the wheel, electronic execution, it's going to be better. So this is going to be a really safe vehicle when it comes to collision avoidance and also performance on-road and off-road. But this is going to be a nimble vehicle, and ABS, which we've all come to, the automatic braking system that stutter steps the brakes. We've all come accustomed to that. There are literally 4 moving parts in the drivetrain. People have argued about this. It's the wheel motors. There's no drive shafts. There's no CV joints. There's no connecting rods. There's no reduction gearing. That's it. Okay, anybody wants to argue about that, they can. So all kind of advantages to that. And the number one is you're not using the battery energy to move a lot of parts that are just transferring energy. This is putting the battery energy directly to the wheels, directly to the ground. Most efficient there is. This is another one. The hub motor can be removed in 5 minutes. You can change a motor in 5 minutes with basic hand tools. Okay? Need I say anything more? Upgrade the motors, take the motors off, fix the motor, replace the motor. Try and replace the motor on a Ford F-150 Lightning. You have to take half the truck apart. Okay, if there happens to be a problem or a recall, or the thing about the consumer version of the battery pack is upgradable, can be removed and replaced. So you can upgrade the battery pack, and the hub motors can be removed and replaced. So you can hot rod this thing up if you want. Okay, 20-inch aluminum wheels. Disc brakes on all wheels. We all expect that. There's a 47-foot turning radius, and this is, again, very nimble. And rack and pinion steering with electronic power assist for parking. I hope this is, I do believe this is variable electronic power steering assist. I am a big fan of rack and pinion, straight on rack and pinion, no power assist myself. But nonetheless, that's a great feel for the road. It gives you some feedback. I think, versus, whatever, an electric steering mechanism. Tesla has a belt and a motor on there, so forth.
Okay, this last section was done a couple of years ago. It's about explaining how hub motors affect the driving experience.
Or Bitcoin. Nobody really understands how it works. So I'm going to try to go over this, and I did a bit of research on it. Let me see if I can explain it. So the idea is you've got a hub on each wheel, and this has a motor in it, and these motors apply torque or rotation, or they use the regenerative braking function to slow the wheel. So they either speed up or slow the wheel, and they do this on each wheel, and they do it on each wheel independently. That's kind of the rub. The hub motor it's got a disc brake caliper in it. It's got a disc brake rotor. It's got a main bearing. It fits, on a regular spindle if you ever changed your wheel bearings. And it's got a controller on it. So it's all in one contained unit. And they've tested these through weather conditions and dirt and all kind of stuff. They're, according to their testing, very reliable. And they got 3 connections. I think they have a power connection, they have a cooling line connection, and they have a control wire that goes to like a central control center, but that feeds some sort of signals to it. But these are independently controlled brushless motors. And the example I want to give is like, these drones, like these camera drones, these people fly around. You see how they move so quickly? Those are independently controlled electric hub motors. But instead of having tires on them, they have propellers on them. And so if you envision how that works, how quickly those turns are made and how they vector those engine thrusts to get those drones to turn and everything, that's what this truck is doing. And like I say, but it's got the same kind of setup, but instead of having propellers, it's got tires. So you got traction, performance, and you get that instantaneous response with the brushless motor and the electronic controls. I don't know if that makes sense. So here's another attempt at an explanation. All right, so let's say you're driving your pickup truck, your endurance pickup truck, and you are coming up, and I don't know, you're going 40 miles an hour or whatever, and there's a hard left turn coming up. The system, by employing torque or slowing with applied regen, is going to operate each wheel separately and instantaneously and simultaneously. And the way it's going to do that, when you come up to this turn, it's going to say, all right, the computer sensors are going to, the computer sensors are going to get all the input data, and they might make the right front wheel go 20 miles an hour. And they might make the rear left wheel go 15 miles an hour. And they might make the rear right wheel go 25 miles an hour. And the front left wheel may be going 0 miles an hour. So they're gonna vector the thrust of these wheel motors so that in addition to you making the turn, the truck is going to pirouette on that front left tire to make this left-hand turn. And it's going to power through the turn for the duration of the turn automatically. You don't have to think about it or anything. And then it's going to go back to normal or whatever the road demands. And this is all automatic. And you can enable different modes in it, but you can also turn it off. But this is the kind of performance you're going to be able to get out. I mean, this is groundbreaking. I mean, this is going to enable turns and that type of performance. I mean, it's going to be sports car level, really. And the other thing about the hub wheel motor configuration, there's going to be an in-cab control screen, and you're going to be able to choose two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. I'm sure you're going to be able to choose whether you want the front two motors to drive or the rear two motors to drive. You're going to be able to choose sport and other modes, snow, probably so on and so forth. and there's going to be real-time monitoring. There's going to be, some type of graphic display there that's going to tell you what the system is doing. And also you have the option of turning it off. So anyway, I think this is a really, really, really good system for an electric vehicle. I think, until something else comes around, it's going to be hard to beat this. And one cool design element that comes along with these hub motors is that it allows the body of the truck to be lower, because it doesn't have to create space for these inline motors and gear reductions that are in the Teslas and the other trucks, the Rivians and so forth. So, you'll have the option to lower it, I'm sure, if you want to, or they may put a function in it that will allow you to raise or lower it. But this gives you a whole new aesthetic for the truck. So I think if you look at the new F-150, for example, the electric prototype they're showing, it's got, they got the body, and then under the body they have it spray painted black. There's another, looks like 12, 14 inches of frame there, and then it finally gets to the ground. So this thing is up there, you know what I mean? And, so is the Cybertruck, but of course the Cybertruck will lower, but I don't know if it will lower. Will it lower like that when it's driving? I guess it will, I don't know, but maybe not. But anyway, the point is, this is a great aesthetic. I think it gives the truck a different stance and a different look.
Okay, guys, I cobbled this together. I hope you like it. It's kind of Lordstown Motors for dummies. It'll fill you in on basically everything for newbies that don't know anything about the company. So I hope you like it. Thanks, comment, and subscribe.